Bibliophiles of the internet, today I'm here to share some new books that have made their way onto my shelves. A little fall book haul, if you will. In full transparency, I was traveling at the end of September, so I'm still working on my September wrap-up, still catching up on things. I need a bit more time to put that together, so I thought I would do this instead. I have some anticipated releases, some books I brought home as souvenirs, some books I would like to read before the end of 2023, so let's just get into it. First up, I have Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. This is a Latin horror story written by a Mexican author. It sounds almost Frankensteinish in the sense that it's about a grieving mother who cuts out a piece of her dead son's lung and then nurtures that lung until it gains sentience. This creature, this carnivorous echo of her son, grows up hidden in the walls of their Mexico City estate, and although he eventually begins to resemble the boy he once was, his innate instinct for violence threatens to destroy his second chance at life. I know this was a recent Literally Dead book club pick, so it might have gained a bit of traction there, but I've actually had this on my radar since May when my friend Andrea reviewed and enthusiastically recommended it on Instagram. Like I said, it's Latin horror, it's queer horror as well, so it's absolutely up my alley. I think this could potentially be a new favorite. I am going to read the first sentence or passage of these books as well to give you a little taste, but just a heads up, this first one does mention child death, so feel free to skip ahead if needed. Her son dies in a child-sized bed. Big enough for him, but barely enough to hold her and her husband, who cling to the edges, folding themselves small so they fit one on each side of him. She savors the constant shifting and squirming needed to keep her in place. Her son was alive, and now he isn't. On a very different note, the next two books I did briefly feature in a Reel/YouTube short I recently cross-posted, so they won't be a surprise, but I did want to talk about them a little bit more because I'm super excited for both of these. First is the Borrow a Boyfriend Club by Paige Powers. This is a newly released trans YA rom-com about a teenage trans boy named Noah who really wants to definitively prove his gender to his classmates. So he wants to join the school's illustrious and very secret Borrow a Boyfriend Club, which masquerades as the Italian Club, I believe, and it's exactly what it sounds like. All the members basically rent themselves out for dates. So Noah figures if he can get into the club and prove he's one of the guys, then he'll finally be accepted for who he is. But he absolutely flubs his audition and ends up having to strike a deal with the club's prickly but attractive president Asher in order to hopefully join their ranks. I cannot tell you how stoked I am to read this book. It is so intensely Ouran High School Host Club coded. If you know, you know, especially with this UK cover which shows all the different boys and their corresponding types as if they're little collectibles. It sounds like it's gonna be absolute chaos and I cannot wait. And the first sentence goes a little something like this. The last thing I expected to see on my first day at Heron River High was "Fa la la fuck this school" spelled atop the snow in festive holiday lights. This is gonna be great. This next book I actually found secondhand at a super great price, so I'm really happy about that, and that is The Red Palace by June Her. This is a historical YA mystery set in the Joseon era in Korea. We follow an illegitimate daughter named Hyun who somehow earned herself a position as a palace nurse. She just wants to keep her head down and win her estranged father's approval, but she's thrust into the dark and dangerous world of court politics when 4 women are murdered in a single night, and Hyun's mentor and closest friend is named as the prime suspect. Determined to prove her friend's innocence, Hyun undertakes her own investigation in secret and encounters Yeojin, a young inspector who's also seeking justice, especially when the evidence seems to point to the crown prince. I love June Her, which might be a wild thing to say because I've only read her debut, The Silence of Bones, but it was fantastic. I cannot wait for A Crane Among Wolves next year, and I intend to eventually read everything she writes. The opening to this one is very brief. "Follow me," Physician Namshin whispered, "and ask no questions." The next 2 books I bought from an independent bookstore while I was on vacation. The first one I was actively looking for when we went into the store, and I told myself, if I find this one, it's coming home with me. And so it did. That was the Luis Ortega Survival Club by Sonora Reyes. This is Sonora's second standalone book after the release of The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, one of my favorite books of 2022. This one is basically in the tradition of John Tucker Must Die, but make it extremely queer, extremely neurodivergent, and extremely BIPOC. Ariana Ruiz is an autistic teenager who never really talks and is mostly ignored by her peers, so when the super popular Luis Ortega starts paying attention to her, it kind of makes some waves. They end up going to a party together and having sex, to which Ari didn't fully consent, and afterwards there are rumors flying around the school about Ari's reputation. But then she finds a note in her locker that leads her to a group of students who are determined to expose Luis for the predator he truly is. As you can tell, the story is definitely going to explore topics of sexual harassment and assault, possibly rape, and the sort of distress and trauma that comes from experiencing and unpacking that. So definitely keep that in mind if you choose to pick this one up for yourself. And the story begins with this. The The driver looks at me like he knows exactly what I just did. The second book I brought back home was one I was pleasantly surprised to see in stock because I've been wanting it for quite some time, and that is The Shape of a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. This is Indigenous YA high fantasy written by a native author, and the story might be queer as well. It's about a young Indigenous woman who enters a colonizer-run dragon academy and quickly finds herself at odds with the approved way of doing things. The main character, Anniek, is the first person on her home island in many generations to find a dragon egg and bond with it, giving her people hope that they can somehow reestablish the symbiotic relationship with dragons that they once had. Unfortunately, the English conquerors have very specific ideas of how a dragon should be raised, and it's only with great hesitance that they allow Anniek to enroll in a proper English dragon school, with the stipulation that if she cannot succeed there, her dragon will be killed. Like I said, I've been super excited about this one. I would love to read it in November because I think it's really important to spotlight Indigenous genre fiction especially, which we definitely need more of. But yeah, with its dragons, academy setting, and pointedly decolonial perspective, I think this is going to be great. Again, this one begins simply but effectively. I was gathering mussels on Slipstone Island when I saw the dragon. Next is an arc I received recently and hope to read very soon for Let the Heritage Month if I can, especially because it's short, and that is The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles by Malka Older, which comes out in February 2024 from Tor.com. If this cover style and author name sounds familiar to you, it's because this is the sequel to The Mimicking of Known Successes, which I read earlier this year and loved. It's a weirdly cozy, sapphic sci-fi mystery noir novella series. The dynamic between the two main characters, Massa and Pleiti, is described as Holmesian in nature, and this installment is following a missing persons case. The series is mostly set on this remote colony outpost on Jupiter, and that's where 17 students and staff members have disappeared from a university without a trace. This case is going to take our duo to the outer reaches of the Jovian system, which is Massa's home, and also potentially shake Pleiti's faith in her work as a scholar of the past in hopes of creating a stable future for humanity. Like I said, love the first installment, can't wait to see where the second mystery is going to take these characters and their newly rekindled second chance romance, so hopefully you'll hear more about this one from me soon. For this one, I'm going to read the opening passage of the prologue because it just feels right. People went missing on Giant. People stumbled or jumped or were pushed through atmos shields and fell off platforms. They took dares to walk a portion of ring between platforms and lost their balance, even if they remembered not to asphyxiate. The entire planet yawned there, an endless gaseous void into which bodies disappeared irrevocably. Lastly for today, we're just keeping it short and sweet here, I have another recent release that I pre-ordered, and that is Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. This seems like an alternate near future playing with some light sci-fi or speculative elements. It's about a version of the world where a smog has spread and food crops are rapidly disappearing, and we follow a chef who escapes her dying career to take a job in a luxurious mountaintop colony that seems to be beyond the reach of the world's issues. There, the skies are clear, there's an abundance of rare ingredients, and her enigmatic employer and his daughter seem to have built a lush new life for the global elite, which reawakens the chef to the pleasures of taste and indulgence. I saw a lot of early reviews floating around for this one, especially from reviewers I love and trust, but for the longest time I recognized the cover, but I had no idea what the story was about. I didn't even know it was about food. It wasn't until I read a review from my friend Hilary at Hilary Reads Books that my intrigue was truly piqued. The way she talked about it reminded me so much of what it felt like to read The Book of Salt, one of the most beautiful and unforgettable books I've ever read in my life, and so I was like, yes, I need to read this. Again, I'm gonna read the opening passage because it just feels like that's what I should do. One day, after my life is already over, a girl comes up to me at the back of the auditorium and says, "Are you the famous chef from Mila?" The question doesn't surprise me as much as the asker. She is 18 or 19 at most, with a face that has not quite grown into its bones, has not decided what it means to be, ferocious or mild, pretty or something more. She's young to be concerned with a period of time that her generation prefers to forget, that my generation would forget, if not for the ruptures that open up in our sleep, that gnawing. So those are 7 books that have recently come across my shelves. In the comments below, let me know if you've read any of these yourself or if you plan to. If you've acquired or borrowed any books recently yourself, also feel free to share about those. But that is everything I had to share for today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, educate yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.